Now we're going to go on to our next speaker because we are running a little behind. So I'm going to ask Melanie Marsha to join us. And she is, she's a professor at the Georgian College. So hopefully she'll be able to join us. No, that's not it.
I'm right here.
You're right here. I see you now.
Okay.
It's a couple seconds for it to pop up on my laptop, and I apologize. So, Melanie, welcome to the event, and thank you for attending. And so, I'll give you the floor.
Thanks so much for having me. Happy International Women's Day, everyone. It's great to, when I scroll through, I see so many familiar faces. So it's so nice. Whether it's at the library, family, friends, it's really nice to be able to see all of you. So welcome. Thanks for welcoming me as well. I'd like to chat just briefly about my academic journey and the career path that I've taken and where I've ended up so far. So I started out in my academic path, not really knowing exactly what I wanted to do, but I knew when I was probably around 14, 15, 16 years old that I wanted to do something in law enforcement. So like many women, 25, 30 years ago and years before that, women in law enforcement, it was met with some trepidation. So there was often questions about, are you sure this is what you want to do? It sounds very dangerous. Is this a career path that you really think that, is it for you? So this could have come from, guidance counselors, teachers, not discouraging, but just really making sure that's something I wanted to do. So I wasn't quite sure, just like every other 15, 16-year-old, but I knew I wanted to do something in law enforcement or in a related field. So I set off to complete a 4-year honors degree in policing and in criminology and law and justice at the University of Waterloo. And I knew after the 4 years, I wasn't quite ready for policing what I thought yet, but I still wanted something more. There was something else missing. So I moved out to BC and I went to Simon Fraser University to do my master's in criminology. It was something that I didn't anticipate at the beginning of my academic path, but it was something that just sort of presented itself. So I moved to BC and started my another academic journey in criminology. And I teamed up with Dr. Gail Anderson, who at the time was named Time Magazine's top 40 under 40 for her work in forensic entomology. And I'm sure many of you have watched CSI and all that fun stuff on TV. But she is truly the leader when it comes to forensic entomology around the world. She was the only female that did it at the time. And so she trained all her male counterparts and all the officers in Canada. So she was a leader in the field and such important work at that time as well. Gail continues to do this groundbreaking work. You can catch her on Discovery. She's got some great documentary series. So you can catch her anytime on YouTube, I'm sure, as well. So I was drawn to her because of her groundbreaking work, but also because she was such a strong woman in the field. And I knew that once I started working with her and doing my graduate work with her, I learned a great deal about bugs on dead bodies, but then I also knew that that was not something I wanted to do for a career. As fun as it is to watch on TV, it's not as fun to do it in person. So during my time at West, again, I got a chance to work with some really incredible leaders in the forensic world as well as in the policing world. And I also was fortunate enough to work with the RCMP as a civilian while completing my research. I completed my research on crime escalation and the DNA data bank. And at that time, I was also situated at E Division at RCMP headquarters. And I was situated in with the profiling unit. So I was able to work alongside and really learn more about profiling than I ever would, I think, on TV. So once I completed my master's and became a criminologist, again, I knew I wasn't quite done yet. So I enrolled with my PhD and I completed my coursework. So once I had completed my coursework, being a small town girl and loving Penetang, I know in high school we all think we want to get out and we need to see the big world, and we do, but there was a longing to come home. My parents, we live on the same street. I live across the street from my sister and her husband and her kids, and it's just what I was most comfortable with. So I knew I wanted to come home. I didn't know what opportunities were ahead. So I did move back home, even though I loved BC so much. And I, again, didn't exactly know what I was going to do, but I was incredibly fortunate to have a chance meeting at Georgian College, and that's where I am today. So I taught part-time with Laurentian University. We were partnered at the time, and I taught in the justice area. So I was able to teach crime and punishment for a full year part-time. And then once I had completed the part-time sectioning for the courses, I was given the opportunity to come on full-time with Georgian. So at the time, there was no such thing as a degree being offered at Georgian. They were all starting to really, it was a new thing that colleges were allowed to offer degrees, because it was something different than what universities were offering. So I was able to become part of this groundbreaking degree, and it was the only degree of its kind in Ontario at the time. So I was the only full-time faculty member for many years, and the only female faculty member as well. So as you can imagine, in the world of policing, as well as a male-dominated college system at the time, I was trying to convince people that it was something that was groundbreaking, really, because it came up against some challenges in terms of not having the policing experience that my colleagues had, and also a new degree that could potentially be competing with the Law and Security and the Police Foundation's diplomas at the time. So it was unique to the college system. It was unique to my colleagues, and seen as somewhat competitive. And so I would often hear, well, why would you need a degree to be a police officer when we have some perfectly good programs? So it came with some challenges, but it was an exciting time nonetheless, because it was something that I was able to be part of, and I knew it was exciting, and I knew people would love it. I just had to convince them how much they would love it. So over time and some perseverance, I broke down barriers with some amazing colleagues by my side. And now for the past 18 years, I have been with the Honors Bachelor of Police Studies at Georgian College. And I've been the coordinator of that program for the past 14 years. So I also serve as the Director of Communications for the Canadian Association of Police Educators, and as a board member at Central North Correctional Centre. So even though I didn't think coming back home to Penetang from being out west, I would have opportunities in a small town, I was able to do more than what I could ever have imagined. I do commute to Aurelia every day, well, not right now, but I do commute on a regular basis. And so there are so many more opportunities for women in policing and women in law and justice in this area that I don't think people even realize. So the police studies degree is, going back to the career path, the police studies degree is one of the strongest college degrees in the province, and it blends a mix of theoretical and hands-on throughout the 4 years of the degree. So I've been fortunate enough to teach a number of courses in my academic career so far. I've taught crime and punishment, sociology for policing, forensic science, criminology, and criminal profiling. So this semester I'm teaching a 4th year criminal profiling course, which I love. It's the one, criminology and criminal profiling are the 2 courses I love the most. And the main focus this semester for my major project for the students, we work on cold cases. And these cold cases are local as well as international. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what my students have to offer in the next month, because it's we're already at midterm now and reading week this week, so it's the semester is going by very quickly. So I think, just to sort of wrap things up, when I was 16 years old and thinking about my career options, I never imagined where I would be right now. And I'm glad that my path veered in a different direction, that I was able to connect with men and women before they become police officers. And it's really exciting to see the degree and where it will go. I consider myself extremely lucky to have found such an empowering and inclusive environment at Georgian College. They treat their employees with the utmost respect, and the senior staff that I report to on the Aurelia campus are strong women, and we all share the same vision of policing. So it's really nice to have such a supportive team and such a supportive employer. I also love the fact that I have a part in helping shape the future of female leaders in policing. Right now, we currently have about 40% women in the 4-year degree program. So I considered it really exciting here today. But I also have to mention quickly that from the ages of 11 to I think 15, I worked as a page at the Penetang Library. And I also worked alongside many very incredible women. And I just want to thank the Penetang Library for helping me build a strong work ethic from a very young age. And I'm just so fortunate to be here and to be able to speak to you today. So thanks very much for having me, and happy International Women's Day.
So now I'm looking for Staff Sergeant Jeannotte, and I'm hoping I have the right person. I'm not sure because there's no pictures, so do bear with me. And hello.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. I'm going to start off by saying I was not a page at the library in Penetang, so that's where I'm starting off. But I was a dietary aide at the hospital in Midland through my high school career. So
wonderful.
Thanks for having me.
Well, welcome to International Women's Day, and I'll let you have the floor.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me here today. What an honor to be part of a global initiative that talks about women and moving forward women and parity and equality. Fantastic. I know for myself, I can say that I've always been of the belief that we should be engaged in our community, and that's one of the great ways that we can make change. And, for myself, I grew up born and bred in North Simcoe, and had some great supportive parents who, of 3 girls, their perspective was a girl can do anything a boy can do. So as the parents of 3 girls, I guess that's really the only perspective you can have. But super supportive parents. And I went to Laurentian University for my honors Bachelor of Arts in Law and Justice, and minored in political science. And when I came home through the summers, of course, like any student, I have to find a job. And my father was employed at a local mill. And through all the years, the mill had always employed summer students, but had only ever employed male students. And what a great advocate my father was, that he pushed forward the idea that, that's not right. And I think the status quo should change on that. And from his pushing, I got hired as a summer student there. And, I faced a lot of challenges. The job was a physical job, and I was always up for a challenge. I had no issues in working hard, but I think probably the more difficult thing was facing a lot of the men that worked there that didn't think that I deserved the job, or that a woman should be in a job like that. And so, I worked very hard to try to prove that mindset wrong. And I must have done something right, because I got invited back the following year to be a summer student. So that's a great news story. But so my journey in the OPP, I think a lot about women in policing. And in 1974, women were invited into the OPP to be police officers. And we think about that, and it really wasn't that long ago. And, they were given their skirt and their high heels and their purse where they had to put their gun. And they were sent on their way as police officers. And, a lot has changed since then. And, we've come a long way. And today, about 1/5 of women make up the police force for the OPP. So we certainly have come a long way, but I think there's some more good work still to be done. My journey in the OPP, I got called, applied for the job as many of us do, and I got called by a recruiter and to offer me a position. And I'm looking on a map as he's giving me the options of where I could go for my first posting. And I'm dating myself when I say a map, because I actually pulled out a hard copy map, and I'm looking, and I said, I don't see the towns he's talking about. And he said to me, turn the map over. And little did I know that the ratio, the scale of the map changes dramatically when you turn it over. And a 13-hour drive later, my first posting was a small town in Northern Ontario, a detachment of about 20 officers. And although I wasn't the only woman there, there were times in my 4.5 years there that I was the only woman police officer in that detachment, because women had come and gone. But I was lucky enough to be supported by my fellow officers, and like any junior officer, man or woman, I had to prove myself to my fellow officers, my reliability and responsibility, and for my 4.5 years there, I was supported and surrounded by some great police officers, and was a valued part of the team. But that was called a duration posting. So when you come into policing's a rank structure. So you come in as a police constable. There's different levels of a constable, but after police constable, then there's a sergeant, staff sergeant, inspector. Where I work now is the ranking officer is an inspector. So I moved down after my duration posting to, who would have thought, because I have to echo Melanie's words that, as a teenager, sometimes we don't think the North Simcoe area is we want to get out, we want to experience new things. But I too found my way back here, and I came to the Southern Georgian Bay Detachment to work as a constable. A great place to work in. I was provided so many opportunities here. Some of the things that I got to experience, I was a scenes of crimes officer, and I was a coach officer, and I coached another young woman who became a successful police officer and still works here at Southern Georgian Bay. I was a marine operator and a snowmobile operator, and I was fortunate enough to have a time in the crime unit, and I worked on a homicide for about a year with our criminal investigations branch. And one of the things that I remember most about the opportunities is I was fortunate enough to become a crisis negotiator. So I teamed up with a couple other crisis negotiators in our region, and we would go to calls for service of barricaded people or suicidal people or hostage situations. Great opportunity for me to be able to hone my communication skills and become a valued member of that team as well. At Southern Georgian Bay, there comes a time, the OPP is such a large organization that it allowed me to explore other opportunities. So I competed for and took a job in our general headquarters. So I worked as a constable. It was an investigative support unit, and it was a provincial unit. And I worked there for a couple of years, and there was an opening for a sergeant. And, I think the time is right for me. So I applied to it, and I was successful. So I worked in that unit as a constable and a sergeant, and I oversaw it was a provincial unit, and I had officers deployed throughout the province. And I was their supervisor, and what a great opportunity that was. And then fast forward to just after the amalgamation with the Midland Police Service, there was a second staff sergeant position created in Southern Georgian Bay. And the drive to Orillia wasn't that onerous. It's about a 50-minute drive for me, but I thought, man, wouldn't it be great to be a little bit closer to home and have another challenge? So I applied for the job of staff sergeant here at Southern Georgian Bay, and I was lucky enough to be successful and moved back. I never physically left the area. Once I moved back from Northern Ontario, I drove, and so I've lived in the area for quite some time. But back working in Southern Georgian Bay. So it was great since 2018. So my job now, it's called an operations manager, and I'm at the rank of staff sergeant. What basically that means is I oversee the day-to-day operations of the police office here in Southern Georgian Bay. And so we cover the areas of Midland, Penetang, Tiny Tay, and parts of Georgian Bay Township. And so it's day-to-day operations, which, can involve, overseeing traffic enforcement and criminal investigations, support areas like scheduling and training for members. There's 100 people who work out of this office, approximately, and of police officers and civilians. So it's not just myself. There's 2 staff sergeants that work out of this office, and we report to an inspector who's the detachment commander. And so it's a pretty busy place, that's for sure, and lots of great challenges, and I've learned so much in the couple of years I've been here. But I want to share a story that, in relation to policing and related directly to the theme for this year's International Women's Day about, choose to challenge. So as in any profession, in any job you have, people love to tell stories. And I remember listening to a story of a fellow police officer, and he's telling the story, and he uses the term PW, which means policewoman. And so I'm listening intently to his story, and I'm thinking, okay, as he's telling the story, I'm trying to figure out why he would have said PW in the story, because the story didn't relate at all to the gender of any of the police officers in the story. And so he finishes his story, and I said to him, so question, why would you say PW? And he said, well, it was a policewoman. I said, yes, but that, there was no relevance to saying policewoman. It's it's an officer, it's a fellow officer. So, why didn't you just say officer? And, I bring that up because so often it's really about a conversation sometimes. We all bring unconscious bias, or, it's something that he wouldn't have, known unless he'd heard it somewhere else. So it's about, like a mindset, and those mindsets go back to different generations. And I don't know who his coach officer was, but clearly at some point he'd heard the term PW and thought it was okay to tell the story and differentiate between a woman police officer and a man police officer, for no particular reason. So I really thought that, something like that is really relevant when we talk about choosing to challenge. And, and from my perspective, I chose to say something, and I thought that was really relevant because, sometimes we just don't realize how we come across or what that means to people. Words can be so important. Anyway, so, I just want to say that everybody who's in a position, no matter what your position is, always faces, those tough challenges. And as women, one of the big challenges I find is balancing your work and your family life. I've got 2 kids. They're both teenagers, and I've always put them first. And a very difficult thing to do when you want to be successful in your career, and you're trying to walk that tightrope of balance to do the best you can do in your position, but also to be, the best mom you can be. And then, lastly, I'd like to say that, my perspective has always been about being part of something. So, whether it's part of a conversation, whether it's part of a group, a club, you can't inflict change, or you can't engage or evoke change unless you're part of something. And so, and that's whatever community you're in at whatever time in your life. So when I was in university, I wanted to be involved, and I wanted to be part of things and make some changes. So I ran for student union of my university, and I was the vice president of the student union for a time when I was there. When in my 20s, when I left the nest of North Simcoe and I lived in Toronto for a while, I joined Girl Guides of Canada, and I was a brownie leader. just because, I wanted to be a positive role model for girls. And then fast forward to, having kids and of course, many of the things that we do when we're moms seems to, have some sort of connection to our kids because we're there anyway. So I have been involved in the local soccer club here for probably about 13 years, starting off as a coach and then a member of the executive. And I was the president for a number of years. And it was just not that long ago I relinquished my position there. My kids had long finished with soccer, but I was still involved because, I think it's important that we all give back to the community if we can. And that's just, a couple examples. I coached both my kids' teams. I coached basketball for my son's rep team. And last year I coached my daughter's senior volleyball team at GBDSS as a community coach, just to be part of. And I really thought it was important to be able to, provide a little bit of feedback to girls in a positive way. And I think we really all need to be part of the community, whether in whatever engagement that is. And then lastly, I'd just like to say, it so much is about discussion and conversations. And, sitting around my kitchen table with my kids, we talk about, a lot of relevant issues, things like, I know one conversation that we had about, why did women have to change their name when they got married, like in a historical aspect. I know that's a totally different topic, and we could probably go on. I could go on about that, about a lot of things, but it's really important that we use conversations to help change people's opinions. People's opinions it's not a genetic thing to have an opinion. It's something that you learn, and it's only through conversation that we can, not only change the people close to us, but also, change opinions of people who surround us in so many ways. So that's all I've got for you. If you'd like to ask any questions, I'm happy to answer.